For most of recorded history, China was the most populated place on Earth. It shaped empires, fed dynasties, and built the largest manufacturing machine the world has ever seen. Now, for the first time in over 60 years, China is losing people. Not slowly, not quietly, and it cannot stop. In 2023, India overtook China as the world's most populous nation. The headlines treated it like a footnote. It was not. It was the opening signal of a shift that economists, military strategists, and world leaders are only beginning to fully understand. Welcome back to Echo Mind Documentaries. If this is your first time here, subscribe, like, share, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Let's dive back into the topic. In 1979, the Chinese government made a decision that would echo across generations. Facing a population it feared could not be sustained, Beijing imposed one of the most sweeping social experiments in modern history. For over 3 decades, most families were permitted to have only one child. Violators were fined, pressured, and in some documented cases, subjected to forced sterilizations. The policy worked. Birth rates fell, but they fell far beyond what anyone intended. The one-child policy created a demographic structure that China will be living with for the rest of this century. It produced an inverted pyramid where the top is heavy with elderly citizens and the base narrows with every passing year. Decades of sex-selective abortions, driven by cultural preference for male children, left China with roughly 35 million more men than women, compressing the pool of potential parents even further. When the policy was officially relaxed in 2016 and then abandoned entirely in 2021, the birth rate did not recover. It continued to fall. In 2022, China's total population declined for the first time in 60 decades. Not since the famine of the Great Leap Forward had China lost more people than it gained. The government recorded a drop of 850,000 people that year. In 2023, the decline reached 2.08 million. In 2024, it stood at 1.39 million. In 2025, the numbers accelerated further, with China losing 3.4 million in a single year, the steepest drop since the Mao era. The total fertility rate, the average number of children a woman is expected to have, sat at roughly 1.0, among the lowest ever recorded for a major nation. Replacement level is 2.1. China is not close. The numbers carry consequences that stretch far beyond a census report. To understand what is at stake, you have to understand what China's population made possible. For 40 decades, a massive and inexpensive labor force allowed China to become the factory of the world. Low wages, enormous scale, and reliable output turned China into the supplier of consumer goods for nearly every economy on Earth. Everything from electronics to clothing to machinery to vehicles moved through Chinese hands before reaching the rest of the world. That model depended on a continuous stream of young workers entering the labor market. That stream is narrowing. China's working-age population peaked around 2011 and has been contracting since. As of 2025, over 323 million Chinese citizens were above the age of 60, representing roughly 23% of the total population. By 2040, projections suggest that number could reach 402 million, surpassing the entire current population of the United States. The ratio of workers supporting each retiree is collapsing. Where once there were multiple workers for every pensioner, that ratio continues to shrink, placing extraordinary pressure on a pension system already strained by years of underfunding. The pension crisis is not theoretical. Young Chinese workers have begun refusing to pay into pension schemes they do not trust will exist when they retire. The government raised the retirement age in 2025, shifting it incrementally from 60 to 63 for men, drawing widespread resistance. Healthcare costs are rising as the elderly population grows. Local governments, many of which are already carrying heavy debt burdens from years of infrastructure spending, are being forced to cover pension shortfalls from general revenues. The fiscal mathematics of an aging society are unforgiving, and China is entering that territory without the per capita wealth that helped Western nations absorb similar transitions. The manufacturing consequences are already visible. China currently accounts for approximately 30% of global manufacturing output. That share is expected to fall as the labor supply contracts and as younger generations, shaped by education and ambition, opt out of factory work entirely. Economist Yi Fuxian, one of the first researchers to publicly challenge China's demographic assumptions, has stated plainly that the collapse of China's manufacturing capacity is unavoidable. The generation born between 1960 and 1980 built China's factory economy. The generations that followed them have different expectations and different options. Labor-intensive production is already beginning to migrate to Vietnam, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Mexico, countries where young populations remain abundant and wages remain competitive. The global supply chain effects are not abstract. Products ranging from electric vehicles to smartphones to basic consumer goods flow through Chinese factories. As labor costs rise and workers become scarcer, the price and reliability of that production changes. Oxford Economics has estimated that the shrinking Chinese workforce could subtract 0.5 percentage points from annual GDP growth every year for the next decade. The IMF has projected that China's potential output growth could fall below 4% in the 2030s and below 3% in the 2040s, compared to double-digit growth rates during the boom decades. For a government that has built its political legitimacy on the promise of perpetual economic expansion, those projections represent not just an economic problem, but a political one. Beijing has tried to respond. Cash incentives for having children have been distributed across dozens of cities. Parental leave has been extended. Tax breaks have been offered to families with 2 or more children. Some municipal governments have mandated access to epidurals, believing that fear of pain is suppressing birth rates. None of it has worked. Economists and demographers largely agree on why. The cost of raising a child in China has risen sharply, averaging around $75,000 per child from birth through education. Urban housing prices have made family formation financially difficult. Women, far more educated and professionally ambitious than previous generations, are choosing career and independence over early marriage and motherhood. The social contract that made large families desirable has dissolved, and no government subsidy has been able to restore it. China's reluctance to address the shortage through immigration compounds the problem further. Unlike the United States, Canada, Germany, or Australia, nations that have used immigration to replenish aging workforces and sustain economic growth, China has maintained an extremely restrictive approach to foreign migration. Cultural homogeneity is a deliberate policy priority. The result is that the one tool most available to aging economies remains largely off the table, leaving automation as Beijing's primary answer to a shrinking labor force. China has invested heavily in robotics and automation, deploying more industrial robots than any other country on Earth. This strategy can absorb some of the gap left by a contracting workforce, particularly in manufacturing, but automation cannot replace the demand side of a demographic collapse. Fewer people means fewer consumers. A nation with a shrinking and aging population does not buy homes, start businesses, or consume at the rates of a youthful and growing one. Japan has lived this reality for decades. Despite technological sophistication and cultural resilience, Japan has struggled with stagnant growth, deflated demand, and a social system stretched thin by the weight of its elderly. China appears headed toward a similar trajectory, but on a vastly larger scale and with fewer financial reserves to cushion the transition. The geopolitical implications carry their own gravity. China's ambition to surpass the United States as the world's leading economic and military power has been built on assumptions of continued growth, a larger and younger workforce, and expanding technological capacity. A shrinking population disrupts each of those assumptions. Military recruitment pools contract as fewer young men reach service age. The innovation economy that drives advanced technology depends on universities producing large cohorts of researchers, engineers, and scientists. As birth rates fall, those pipelines narrow over time. Xi Jinping has spoken of a Chinese century.
Whether that vision can survive a demographic trajectory now running against it is among the most consequential questions of the next 50 years. The United Nations projects that China's population, currently sitting at around 1.4 billion, could fall to 1.3 billion by 2050, and then drop to 633 million by 2100. That projection places China among the nations expected to experience the largest absolute population loss of any country on Earth across the coming decades. Entire regions of China are already experiencing contraction. The most developed coastal provinces, the economic engine of the country's growth story, are seeing population decline accelerate as younger workers choose not to form families and the elderly share of residents grows. What happens to a civilization that built its power on scale and now watches that scale diminish? History offers partial answers. Rome's decline was inseparable from its demographic contraction. The Qing dynasty's final decades were shaped in part by a mismatch between population and economic capacity. In the modern era, no great power has successfully reversed a demographic decline once it reached the structural depth now evident in China. Japan remains the closest parallel, and Japan, for all its ingenuity, has not found a way back. China is not finished. Its technological capacity, its infrastructure, its institutional structures, and the ambition of its government and people remain formidable. Automation and artificial intelligence may yet rewrite some of the economic calculus, but the demographic reality is no longer approaching, it has arrived. The question is no longer whether China's population will keep shrinking. The question is what kind of country, what kind of economy, and what kind of power China becomes as it does.